Welcome to the new and improved ConfigureITDone Podcast. The ConfigureITDone Podcast is now a place where we interview senior thought leaders in the SAP space across Australia and New Zealand, and the aim is to tap into their knowledge so we can pass on their insights to the listening SAP community. Please subscribe to the podcast and like, share and comment across Castos, YouTube, Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
This podcast is in partnership with the Black Dog Institute, who aim to create a mentally healthier world for everyone. If you wish to donate to the cause, please click the link below. Hello everyone, welcome to a solo episode, just me today, of the SAP podcast Configure It Done. I'm so happy to introduce my guest Sunjoo. Hello Sunjoo, how you doing today? Thank you for coming on.
Hi Sarah, how cool is this?
It's weird, isn't it? It's weird, it really is. You'll get used to it hopefully. Yeah. Just ignore the big fat orange microphone in front of your face.
That's a good big fat orange microphone.
Yeah. Well, as a bit of an introduction, Sunjoo, you started your career in SAP, obviously, Accenture, almost 12 years ago now though, right? Even
actually,
more.
To be precise, 25 years ago.
25? Yeah. How did I get 12? I was a solution architect for 12.
So, you're not wrong. 12 years of doing just SAP.
Yeah.
But then I have another 10 plus years of doing something different. And now, interestingly, going back to my SAP world for different reason.
Yeah.
So, would you like to hear the story?
I would. So I think we're here to learn a little something interesting from Sunjoo, particularly around human-centered design. So obviously at the market at the moment, I mean, S4HANA, BTP, it's literally the word on every client's list. They're all just wondering, how do we do it? Is it going to work? Is it worth it? Should we just chuck SAP out? Should we gut it? Should we hold on until 2027 for as long as we can? I'm really keen to see, A, your thoughts on that, but also B, what is this human-centered design and how can it be helpful and implemented and really revolutionizing to how we approach SAP projects today?
Love your questions, Sarah. What a great questions. So to start with my take on S4HANA and BTP, which is supposedly taking us to digital era, not just back-end in-house processing. So S4HANA and BTP are, in a nutshell, fantastic technologies and tools, and they are the tools. So, if you kind of quickly browse through the key attributes and benefits of S4HANA, for example, we heard enough about in-memory processing, in-memory database, faster, greater processing, and greater integration with mobile devices, fantastic, and more configurable features. People can extract the insight right there and then within the transaction and process context,
which is so important,
which is amazing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
However, you kind of start to think that, okay, that's a great capability, assisting capability for us to do something great. But it's a bit like, are we putting the cart before the horse conversation?
Yeah.
Because if I look back my 12 years of SAP implementation experience, starting as a consultant, moving into solution architect, project manager, and I actually managed the SAP practice for a consulting firm to overarch the deliveries of multiple projects. Time and time again, the success of the project are defined in many different ways. Typically we say on time, on budget, on scope, right?
The classic line.
But then interestingly, I had so many successes like that, but pretty much every successful my SAP project end up with kind of same symptom. People were not happy.
Yeah.
People dread SAP only because they feel it's too complicated. too hard to adjust. And it doesn't actually address my exact pain point I'm going through every day. And that's no one's fault, right?
Yeah.
And we are at the evolution of that maturity curve where we don't know what we don't know. So again, my SAP implementation experience is a little bit outdated. Hopefully this is still resonating with some of you. But between mid-1990s and 2005, when I was working on various SAP projects, often those great methodologies, I've done a lot of ASAP, Accelerated SAP Implementation Methodology. Those great methodologies often didn't really leave a lot of room for people, the users and the consultant, to start the whole journey on a very firm understanding of what are the key problems we want to fix, what are the key opportunities we want to address, and who are actually facing those problems, because they are the people very likely have the very key to the finding the right solution. So we didn't really have that kind of structure or time and budget or right assistance to do that bit, but we kind of jump into that solution building. Let's build a tool.
And it's so interesting that often, you look at an end goal and you know really clearly, I know exactly what success looks like in terms of an ending.
Correct.
But no one really thinks about, actually, where are we starting from though? What's our starting line?
Why?
Yeah. How
Start
long
with
do
the
we
why.
need to sprint for?
Yes.
You know, is this a 100-meter sprint? Am I just about
That's
to
right.
embark on a marathon, but I think I'm just doing, a short distance jog?
Yes,
Like, I think that,
absolutely. There's a lot of really amazing points you are grabbing there. The sprint, we all love Agile, right, nowadays?
Yeah.
So for me, Agile has been a little bit misinterpreted in a way that if you think about agility, which is velocity, it's not just about speed. Speed and direction needs to gel together to be truly agile. So I think we've done a great deal of good job in making it speedier, chunk it down into smaller sprint, and then be diligent about hitting that sprint goal. But in terms of setting that direction, which gives you that big picture, which is beyond and above that individual sprint, and also the individual project, or just the SAP system. Because the reason why we want to use SAP is not for the sake of using SAP, is it?
Yeah.
The reason why is to solve our problem and grab the opportunity and making people's lives better, which will naturally align with the achieving organization objective, right? So I think your question is really great in that we have to kind of look for that, not really true north, because it's going to change, but that flag on the horizon, as far as we can see today, having that big picture as a destination or target point, and marching on, and in that little repetitive steps of marching on, we can always validate, are we actually progressing in the right direction? Are we progressing at the right pace? And how do we actually validate or measure the progress we are making? Or when we hit the milestone or eventually get there to that faraway point, how are we going to measure in a meaningful way? Not just saying, these are the list of features and functions we have delivered to you. Are you happy? Because that's very shopaholic approach, right?
Yeah.
You know,
it's in the shopping cart, I've checked out.
Yeah. But as we know personally, buying a lot of stuff doesn't make you really happy, does it? Buying the right thing for the right usage will make us happy, right?
And is this where human-centered design kind of comes into it?
Absolutely. That's exactly the point I was driving. That direction, putting the time and energy for understanding the problem and the people who owns that problem before we actually go and build a solution is all about human-centered design. Because people often think design, a little bit misunderstanding the core intent of design. If I say I'm a designer, they think I'm the person who will make things pretty. But it is, and that's part of it. We all love pleasant things and flow, convenient,
But
one
it's
click
also,
instead of two
but it's
clicks.
functionality.
But
it's-
that's semantics. It's a bit like cherry on the cake. Cherry is important to make the cake look good, but cherry is not the cake itself.
Yeah.
You still have to have the cake, right? So human-centered design really addresses that problem space, making you be very clear about what are the problems we have to focus on, what are the opportunities we must achieve. In the other side of long list of features and functions, without using any technical jargons, can we speak in plain English, in human terms? If we do a great job, what's going to be like? And how
Yeah.
are we going to measure that? If we do a fantastic job, how are we making people's lives better? And whose life is it?
Yeah. Who are we actually addressing here?
That's right.
Because it's probably not the CIO or the CFO that's signing off on the budgets
Well,
and
they're
that
still
kind
people,
of thing.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's not exclude them. When we say people are inclusive terms of your employees, which covers all levels, executive, operational, management, and staff, but also your customers, but also anyone you collaborate, your partners, everybody who puts on human being skin in that whole ecosystem. That's what human-centered design is about. Human-centered design is, as you just said, not just for executive. They are included, but they are not the only one. But include the whole spectrum within the organization, outside of the organization, adjacent to that organization. That's what human-centered design is. Hopefully that kind of gives you some flavor.
Well, what I'm keen to know then is if you kind of had to define human-centered design, obviously I can tell it's going to incorporate, every Tom, Dick and Harry basically in terms of, the SAP system, who it's going to touch, who it's going to affect. But at its core, what would you say it actually is in practice?
Love your question. Very good and difficult questions you keep
Yeah.
asking. If I just try to trim it down, the essence of human-centered design, it is about connection and building relationship. And I think this may sound quite abstract. And what are you talking about in the sphere of technology? We're talking about technology success here. But interestingly, in my 25 years of technology IT career, I had this period of going really deep and digging in and utilizing technology as much as possible. And that was great. That was great fun. But more and more, I feel that if we don't start the whole thing from that why, just as Simon Sinek says, starting with why rather than what and how, and if we create that connection and relationship with the people who we are serving with this technology outcome, then we are having the very success formula. So that's what human-centered design is about.
Yeah, and I get you because I think that so often you get clients asking for that. So as a recruiter, for example, I think particularly for SAP, it's very hard now to find a pure SAP role. And by that, I mean all you're going to be dealing with is SAP from 9 to 5. I just don't think that those roles exist anymore because if you can't storytell, if you can't connect with the business on a real meaningful level, and most importantly, like I keep bringing it back to, I see so many projects, like you said, the measure of success at the moment still on time, on budget. But it's not successful, in my opinion, if no one's using it at the end.
There isn't, those are the important measures, but part of it, right?
They
can't be 100%
it can't be 100% of
it.
It needs, there must be more because you've just paid God knows how much for this license and you've just spent even more trying to implement it. You need to have more than, I delivered on time and on budget. So if you looked at human-centered design in terms of it being applied to an S4HANA project or any SAP project really, what kind of bedrocks, what kind of foundations, like what are the hallmark traits of a human-centered design process being applied to an actual implementation?
really good. So you asked a really good question about the essence and core of human-centered design, which I answered in abstract manner, connection and relationship, right? Sounds great. Be empathetic. Be empathetic with someone's problem. But it actually equips you with a whole range of very tangible approach, tools, and process for you to do that very thing. You're starting with that empathy, which is, again, I don't want to go on about these jargons. We all hear it: personas, user journeys, service blueprint, stakeholder mapping. Look, I just think that first of all, what we need to think about is that outcome-driven mindset. We have to change our mindset in that those outputs are great tool again for us to get there, but we have to think about what are the outcomes which will actually shift the needle and truly give that qualification of, is this project successful or not successful? So rather than me saying, how, just hire some designers and start doing user journeys and personas and service blueprint, which is not a bad process, but more importantly, I would like to go back and talking about creating that right connection with the right people and creating that relationship process, which actually should start far before SAP project is planned, scoped, and kicked off. So typically in a business, and partners fortunately get into that relationships and conversation quite early on nowadays, ideating that S4HANA move and conceptualizing that and actually evaluating business viability and technical feasibility in that business case. I think we need to have that right mindset in looking at this and formulating this business case, making sure people desirability, the humanity, is part of taking equal seat in that business case with technology and business viability. So how to do that is a very interesting question. Of course, it would be fantastic if you can go start that journey with some great human-centered designers who helps you every part of the way. But if you're not that lucky, still, I think having that right consensus at the beginning by the key stakeholders that this is something really important. We need to be on the same page and have that buy-in way before we are starting building our tools.
And is that buy-in from the business as opposed to just your IT team?
Correct.
Yeah.
But then, buying in is a complex term, right? Well, I'm signed up for it. How do you make people say, in a true sense, in all honesty, I'm buying this in, I'm signing up, I'm going to commit, I'm going to, find my energy and time to, you can't expect them to do that just out of pure will. Yeah. What you have to do is the empathy. You have to identify your key stakeholders and you have to start that conversation with them. So what are your key, deepest pain points? What keeps you up at night? What are the key things? And if you don't have any constraints in terms of cost and capability and time, what will be your dream comes true?
Interesting.
Hopes and dreams. You need to understand their hopes and dreams and biggest pain point, and then line them up in the pocket of what are the easy and fast things we can achieve, what are the more complicated but very important things we shouldn't be forgetting in this long journey or even beyond the initial implementation of S4HANA. And in that conversation, you have to make sure positioning S4HANA's place as a major player but not the player. Because more often than not, our problems and dreams are much more complicated than being addressed by just one super system, is that right? And at the end of the day, let's face it, S4HANA is still a back-end system, systems of record, not systems of differentiation or not systems of innovation. But having S4HANA, I often talk about this analogy. if I look at my house, no matter how much of Alexa and smart lights and Google Home I want, if my house doesn't have proper plumbing system, the backbone of the house, none of that actually matter. So for me, like S4HANA, these backend systems are like plumbing system of the whole enterprise. You've got to sort that out before you can do any whiz-bang smart, amazing stuff. And from my experience of working in digital innovation using IoT, machine learning, AI, robotics, process automation, mobility, all of these amazing technologies inherently has to integrate with SAP to bring that true benefit back into the enterprise. So, sorry, I'm carrying away. What was the question?
The hallmarks of what human-centered design is thinking.
Right.
And I think you did touch on it. You said, the beginning is the conversation needs to start early.
Correct.
Not when you start. You need to really understand, like you said, connect with empathy.
Correct.
And I think a really interesting point that you touched on is if money wasn't an issue, what actually would you want to achieve in this?
So if you show your deep understanding of what that person feels in terms of hopes and desires as well as pains, that gives you immediate trust and connection, even if you don't give them the solution today. It's a bit like when you walk into a shop, some salespeople does that really well, right? Yeah. Even though you know that stuff that salesperson has may not be exactly right. When that salesperson shows that empathy and the intention to understand where you're coming from, what you actually need, you feel like buying, don't you?
Yeah, you do. I mean, it's funny because as a recruiter, we do something really similar.
Yes.
Often, I'll call somebody and they'll be like, "Oh, well, tell me about the job," and I'm like, "But I want to know you."
Correct.
Because I could have many, or I could have none.
Yes.
But if I don't know what you want, and we ask a really similar question, you say, if money's not an issue, what's your dream?
Absolutely.
We say the same thing.
Yes.
Forget about why I've called you.
Yes.
What's your dream? Because, like you said, you walk into a shop, you don't necessarily know if they have what you're looking for.
Correct.
But I think really important for you as well, when you walk into a shop not knowing what you're looking for, you're overwhelmed. You look at racks and you're like, I don't know if I need any of this. And maybe you walk out with a thing you don't need. And I feel like it's so similar, right?
Yeah,
it's
I'm so
similar.
refreshed to hear that from you, from your recruitment perspective. It's all same, isn't it?
It really is.
If you're driven by your own purpose and longer term view, not just matching someone with a job, right?
Yeah.
Then you care. And you empathize with that person. And that gives you the ticket to create that right relationship and trust and connection. Once you have that, hey, you can
so
start
much
the journey.
easier. Yeah, it's so much easier. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if that's the beginning, what does it look like in the middle? Human-centered design.
So that's all the way to defining that problem space, I call it.
Yeah.
Defining that roadmap and the target state and having everyone on the same page, having buy-in, consensus, all of that. Now what, right? So one of the interesting mistakes I see often happening is that some organization does really well all the way there, but then actual solution building and development can be dropped off the cliff. By all of a sudden, okay, we figured it all out, and you've got beautifully written, amazing. Everyone
Look at
signed
this documentation.
up. Documentation. Go and build it and throw it over the fence. I think that's one of the classic mistakes we must address. In that continuous interaction and connection and validation with the real people who will use that system at the end of the day, who knows nothing about the technology or configuration. Keeping that interaction all the way through in that development process is the key. And that's that start to pulling a bit more disciplined process in terms of structuring those sprint, not just having the ceremony for the sake of having the ceremony, but actually use that as a frequent check-in and checkpoint with the people who know nothing about SAP configuration, and deliberately so. You don't want them to actually start to talk to you about, can you change that configuration that way? You want that. You want them to just plainly state, in my real life, this is how I use it.
Yeah.
This is my process. This is the policy I need to follow. And in the system, if somehow you make the magic, this is the outcome I should be having. And it's, again, it brings up my favorite analogy about this process. Diet. Let's talk about diet. Everybody's kind of thinking about how much weight I should lose this year, right? And if you think about it, what is simpler than being on diet or lose weight? Eat less, move more. Is there more than that? It is that simple equation, but why 90% of people cannot maintain their ideal weight and fail to lose? And there's so much industry supporting this weight loss, but hardly hear any success story, right? It's still quite a few, far between and few. So for me, the process of this dieting is very similar to human-centered design again. If let's say I'm the weight loss expert, I am today, and then Sarah, you're my lucky client.
Sure.
And if I just go and say to you, Sarah, what do you want? Tell me, what do you want? In terms of losing weight.
Yeah.
That's right. You want to lose weight.
Yeah.
Oh, everybody says kale is fantastic. I should eat more kale. Okay. I like to have at least 2-course meal for my dinner, but I still want to lose weight. And maybe I should cut down my calorie intake less than 1,000 kilojoules per day, something like that, right?
Yeah.
And I just write it down. And sure, Sarah, I'm going to, find the correct diet plan for you.
Let's put a plan together.
A bit less confidence there, right? Will that person really come up with something? Whereas if I'm starting to ask, okay, Sarah, let's put aside how much kilos you need to lose aside, and let me ask you some questions. What sort of food you actually love to eat? And what sort of food you have allergic reaction or you really hate? No matter how good they are, you hate it. And typically, how's your day look like? Do you have 10 minutes to cook your dinner, or do you have an hour to cook your dinner? Do you only cook for yourself, or do you have a little children who you need to care for in terms of creating one meal everyone can eat? What is your physical vulnerability? Do you have some proneness to high blood pressure? Do you have cold sore often popping up on your lips? So if I ask very relevant and specific questions about you, then you have a lot more confidence in my diet plan, which will be you-centered, Sarah-centered.
Yeah.
Not just giving you a boilerplate of less than 1,000 kilojoules a day and you've got to eat maximum amount of kale. How disgusting it tastes. I don't care. You should eat that.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what human-centered design is about. Human-centered design is putting that people who face those problems, who wants that improvement, in the middle, right, left, right, and center. You keep thinking about everything from their own word. You're almost trying to teleport yourself inside of their brain and see the word through their eyes and speak the language through their voice. You've got to think about that amoeba tactic.
Yeah.
But then the beauty and the challenge of this process is that often it's not just one person or one type of user group. You've got to cater for the whole solution direction. So even before you start doing this structured, asking the right questions process, and understanding that specific person, you have to do what they call stakeholder map. Again, sounds very, impersonal, dry. But simply speaking, it is all about understanding, okay, that same problem, what are the all different people who will face that problem slightly differently from their own context, and identify those people. Who do I need to talk to see the exactly same problem and same goal through their eyes and with their voice? So that's the stakeholder mapping.
Yeah.
And often we miss quite an important part of the people. because sometimes companies just don't care about their employees but only care about customers.
So if that's the middle, and it sounds like human-centered design really is almost that combination of, I think it's knowledge and empathy, isn't it? It's knowledge of who you're working with, and then the empathy of really not just taking a face value statement, I want to lose weight, actually digging into why. What do you have coming up? What kind of body do you have? What are your eating habits? Like all of that. It's not just taking that face value statement of we want S4HANA. Why do you want it? Is it just the cutoff? So what I'm curious to know now is if the beginning of human-centered design is at the very, very, even pre-S4HANA, even becoming part of the conversation, knowing where you're starting and knowing the people that you're starting with, if the middle is fully understanding and having those constant touch points of saying, okay, this was the beginning, this is the end, how are we doing? Particularly with people in mind. Yeah, what does the end look like? What would you say are some hallmark traits of a program that doesn't have human-centered design in it, and then one that does?
I'm going to be very simple and abstract again. The hallmark difference is the happiness. So without human-centered design, often people feel like they are being pushed.
Yeah.
Before they understand the benefits and why, they feel like someone's just strangling their neck saying, vanilla SAP is fantastic, just eat it.
Yeah.
No
just
matter
have
how
the
much.
cookie. Have the cookie SAP, it's fine.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they feel strangled like, because business wants it, because our customer wants it. But where's my happiness in that? You know, humans are rightly so selfish, self-centered, and that is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
We can't discount the people who will actually have to pull up the most effort and energy into it. If you exclude them, then the success of that project either less than what you expected or very superficial.
Yeah.
Often those projects end up with a result. The very people who will use it goes, well, I don't know what was that all about for? You know, another couple of $millions drained. I'm not happy with this. Yeah. I know I'm forced to using it. Whereas human-centered design, properly applied, driven, and followed through, close the loop of that whole process till the end. Whether the final tangible result is up to that expected level or not, everybody is in peace and they are happy to be in that process because they are heard and they know the intent is to support them. I think, interestingly enough, the reason I feel strongly about what I believe in back in SAP, after I played all of these front-end technologies and doing most of things for customers and our front-end workers, is that I started to think really more about, you know, every company says we want our customer love our product, our services, and us, right? That's every company's vision at the end of the day. But as Simon Sinek accurately said, your own employees will have to love your organization before any of your customer will ever will. So we talk about customer experience. CX has been such a buzzword. And for me, employee experience and customer experience are two sides of the same coin. They are not two separate things. You cannot give what you don't have. Yeah. So it's such an irony. We keep saying we're going to provide great customer experience so we can succeed and give your own employee crap experience. And unfortunately, a lot of that crap part, SAP is part of it. What I'm saying is, not because SAP doesn't have the capability. SAP is the greatest tool in the market. You can do anything. I remember I was so fascinated by how much of collective thinking and knowledge is in that software, because by configuring in so many different ways, you can pretty much fit in anything. Yeah. Right? The technology and tool itself is so superpowered, supercharged. It can do anything we want. But what is that we want? It's so ironical. We don't spend even close or comparable level of effort in understanding what do we really need to have before you go and actually build it. Because these technologies are like superpowers. Going back to that employee and customer talk, the reason I feel strongly why SAP, why human-centered design is so critical in SAP's success is because SAP is creating most of the experience of that employee part.
Yeah.
And if you truly believe your employees are the most strategic asset for your organization, you support them, you empower them, you inspire them, and so will your customers.
Yeah.
That's such a simple equation we often forget.
No, it's true.
So the whole process of empowerment of your true workforce, S4HANA implementation process can be such a pivotal moment. And there's so much to gain by having human-centered design in whatever shape, whatever degree your organization can afford. Because it could be as simple as some mindset culture shift sessions. Hey guys, let's meet more with the people rather than having that drew a line in the sand between IT department and business and whoever. Why don't we meet them regularly every 4 weeks? Because let me give you striking statistics based on research data. If you expose your developers regularly 2 hours in every 6 weeks, then the customer satisfaction for the result of the development goes more than 40%. That is research data which is proven. So that 2 hours exposure doesn't mean you actually have a structured design thinking workshop with them. Yeah. You just go and see them, meet them, and say, well, let me see how you are using that system. And sometimes not even the system. Let me just follow you around for 2 hours. What are you doing? And
what do you do with your day? Where? Yeah, but it's true.
And at which point of time you actually need to pull out that SAP's transaction screen, and you will learn so much about. It's not just about giving them transaction code which is beautifully configured. It's about understanding, oh, actually in that point of time, they have to use mobile phone instead of computer. They don't have the desktop access. Oh, typically for that transaction, they have approximately 5 minute max. So what that means for their cognitive capability to be absolutely productive within 5 minutes, I have to give them maximum 10 field to fill in. Yeah. Not more than 10. So it really informs your whole design and development effort based on firmly grounded reality. So that's thanks for mentioning about my new business, which is very fun name, CoffeeIT.
Yeah.
So a lot of people ask me, why do you name your business as CoffeeIT? And my answer is because personally, I believe the greatest benefit of all of this technology has to be to give us more time for coffee.
Yeah. So more time to just be.
If technology is doing this great job of automation, simplification, eliminating all the crap for us, do the difficult, hard, dirty works for us, what will happen is we will have more time for coffee. Coffee time is so symbolic because I love having coffee by myself, because that's the time to be with me and reflecting, and that's the time I can be creative and have some amazing idea and simply feeling good. And coffee time with others is the starting point of connection and relationship and empathy. So all of this idea, again, I'm trying to be very abstract and simple. I feel that there's a huge benefits and role for human-centered design to play. And going back to that degree and structure and the length of human-centered design, you don't have to have multi-million dollars to inject that human-centered design in most elaborate way. Teach people some very simple basics of design thinking. What is design thinking? Everybody thinks something different, right? Everybody think about some sort of diamond or sticky notes, butcher papers.
Yeah.
But design thinking is really, number one, being empathetic. Try to think from your perspective. And that is different from sympathy. Sympathy is feeling for you, but empathy is feeling with you, right? And then the second thing is be design thinking number 2 idea is be like a child, be like a beginner. You always ask why. Do not take anything just because that's the way we have been doing for donkey's years, just because that's what my boss wants to tell me. Having that innocent why, not necessarily confronting people, but, well, I don't understand. Why? Have that beginner's exploration mind is the design thinking. The third one is not being judgmental. Do not think that world is made of black and white and there's something always wrong. That's a different perspective. And always understanding what are the pros and cons on that situation and have that non-judgmental mindset, and that's really helpful to form a relationship, right? If someone's judgmental, you don't want to talk to them. And then the fourth one is everybody says embrace your failure, learn from it, fail fast. But hey, let's face it, we all hate to fail.
Yeah.
I mean, we are hardwired from the school days. If you fail the exam, you're a loser. What are you talking about?
And you have to do it again.
That's right.
What's the point? Yeah.
So design thinking number 4 is that always focus on the learning, because there's hardly ever, never failure if you learn something about it. And stop that cost of learning at the level you can handle.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the design thinking number 4. And design thinking number 5, what is it? Listen to each other. These are supported approach. My management, my boss, they don't tell me exactly how, but these are the high level things that will support me to apply. So going back to my SAP implementation experience and memory, although the world was different then, design thinking, human-centered design didn't even exist. 1995, who knows about these things, right? And we were just, marching on like army of soldiers based on these hundreds pages of business requirement document in front of us, and creating functional specification and execute unit testing, user acceptance testing, regression testing, integration testing. You don't like it? Too bad. Accept it, type of approach.
Yeah.
But even in that difficult times, I remember a few of my colleagues, I wouldn't mention real name of that, let's say Joanne and Bob. So Joanne and Bob were ABAPers. ABAPers are in this very intricately complex situation of management say, go and do vanilla. And then you just say, no way, Jose, I can't accept that like that. So I've got to, have a customization or whatsoever to do that. And these two ABAPers were very, now looking back, they were innate human-centered designers, because often ABAPers just do whatever people say, this is what I need. And then at the end, get all the blame. That's not what I expected. Who told you so? And then they go like, well, I worked so hard. What,
Yeah, and having to juggle these two things. Yeah.
But Joanne and Bob were quite an outstanding ABAPers. They will always put that documentation aside, read it, put it aside, and go and actually sit down with those people who said, I need this. And they keep saying, you need to change that switch. You need to have that capability. You need to make that happen. And they said, we will, but let's just step back and tell me about your whole process and how you're using it. And with this thing, that shiny button, what is the thing you want to achieve? You know?
What is it going to do?
So they were asking this, and I was quite fascinated when I was watching them, because at that time, just asking those benign whys were seen as a bit controversial. Like, client-server structure wasn't just in hardware concept. We were the server, they were the client, they were the masters.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah, just do it. I've already told you.
What's your problem?
Yeah.
But they really did that process, and always the outcome of that ABAP development by those two were outstandingly satisfying, and people respected them. They got the most respect out of all the functional consultants because they were not the ones who will just go and do it.
Yeah.
And they were asking the right questions.
And I think that is genuinely the number one skill we look for.
Correct. And
as a
that is
recruiter.
human-centered design.
Yeah, that is,
Human-centered
isn't it?
design is talking to them.
Yeah.
Go and have a chat.
It's literally someone who, like, it's funny you brought up coffee, but something we often say in recruitment is this the type of person you have a coffee with in the morning and then a beer in the evening?
Yes.
And that is
Yes.
something you don't see on the CV. It's not something that someone
true.
shouts from the top of the roofs
So
about.
true.
But it's such an essential part of, I think, where SAP has come as a technology. It's too ingrained in your business now for your IT team to sit completely separate.
Absolutely.
You need to be there. You need to
Absolutely.
know who's actually working these things. It's like expecting an SAP WM consultant who's never been to the warehouse to know what they're doing. They don't even know what stock is in there sometimes. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that that's becoming so important now. And particularly, I think COVID posed an interesting challenge in that.
Very.
We did lose that. We lost that human connection.
Yes.
And now that it's coming back, I don't think I've spoken to a client of late who has just said, oh, well, you know, nah, they're just going to sit in the corner and they're going to do their work. It's just not the way anymore. You need to be able to have some form of human connection because, if you aren't working in the same space, it's like that 1% deviation at the beginning. It's not much at the beginning.
Yes.
It's just 1%.
Yes.
But
yes.
fast forward 100% later, you're way off.
Yes, I totally agree with you. I mean, it does certainly pose some challenges for us, but with anything, any situation, it is so much about acknowledge the constraints, but take the advantage of the situation where you can, right?
Yeah.
Because this hybrid working, I personally love it because I don't have to just move myself every single day just for the sake of being in the office.
Yep.
There are things which are much more productive by being myself in my own environment. Whereas I'm very 50 extrovert, 50 introvert. I do miss people. If I don't go to see people in real 2 to 3 times a week, I feel quite sad, feeling isolated and lonely. So I think everybody, if they can take advantage of this flexibility and agree on that time, can we actually connect and physically do something together? Because there are advantages and disadvantages on virtual meetings. Virtual meetings tend to be very focused. We can get a lot done. But then when we are meeting in person, not just hearing your voice, Sarah, or two-dimensional image of you, I read a whole lot more about your hands and your overall ambience, your energy, very subtle difference in your mouth shape. All of this we miss, right?
Yeah.
So for me, like human-centered design can be done virtually and in person. And in fact, in the middle of COVID, I was in the middle of doing design thinking workshops for about 300 people, and I was really scared and had almost nervous breakdown to run design thinking workshop completely virtual. But then, interestingly, always, starvation drives innovation. I suddenly realized running this 100 people design thinking workshop virtually can have its advantage and different type of perks, such as using Teams and Miro tools. I didn't have to worry about actual physical logistics constraints, pulling in so many different people's time into that space and time, which is very hard to achieve. And I used to hate the post-design thinking workshop with so many butcher papers and sticky notes, and I'm like, kill me now. How am I going to do all of this? Whereas Miro sorts all of that out automatically with affinity mapping, and Teams gives you this breakout room capability. So I've got 200 people on this Teams call, and I could make 20 breakout rooms, which is not possible in physical logistics, right?
Yeah.
So you just have to apply your same spirit, intent, and purpose of human-centered design in whatever situation with that constraints, and you can take it to your advantage, turn that into your advantage. That's what we need to believe. And I think the crux of human-centered design, again, is really going back to that trust in humans' ability. Someone said to me really great phrase about innovation equals lack of time and/or resource multiplied by optimism. And I think that's so true.
Yeah.
Starvation drives innovation. We don't innovate unless we are a bit pushed.
Yeah.
But then when you are pushed and feel under pressure and stress, if you are not optimistic, then you don't come up with brilliant thought and ideas, right? So human-centered design is so much about the trust and belief in our capability to innovate. That is where everything kind of meets together using this digital technology, using human-centered design. Equals better life for all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what a lovely way to wrap up. Oh, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Hopefully we'll see you again soon. And if anyone wants to reach out to Sunjoo about anything around human-centered design thinking, she obviously knows what she's talking about. Feel free to leave a little comment in the box below and we'll pass along the details. But thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Please like, share, comment and subscribe to the ConfigureITDone podcast.